Some people genuinely think Manchester City was created in 2008, like the club just randomly appeared the second billionaire owners arrived and started throwing money around. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Because what if I told you Manchester City were founded before Arsenal, before Chelsea, before Liverpool, before Real Madrid, and even before Barcelona? And what if I told you Manchester City won a major trophy before Manchester United ever did? Yeah, suddenly the whole historyless club argument starts sounding a little stupid. But trust me, it gets even crazier than that. Because the history of Manchester City Football Club is honestly one of the weirdest stories in football. This is a club that has gone from setting attendance records to nearly collapsing completely, from winning league titles to getting relegated immediately afterwards, from dominating English football to literally falling into the third division. And somehow, after all of that chaos, they eventually became the most dominant team England has ever seen. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. Because Manchester City weren't always called Manchester City. The club was actually founded in 1880 under the name St. Mark's. And the reason they were created in the first place is genuinely insane. Back then, areas around West Gorton in Manchester were dealing with massive social problems: alcoholism, unemployment, gang violence. Things were getting bad, so a couple of church wardens basically decided, you know what might calm people down? Football. And honestly, fair enough. The club was founded by members of St. Mark's Church of England, but despite the religious connection, the club was open to everybody, regardless of religion, which was actually pretty progressive for that time period. Now obviously, like most newly created football clubs, they were absolutely terrible at first. In their first ever season, they won just one game. One. So yeah, Manchester City were basically doing charity work for other teams back then. But slowly, the club started growing. As they expanded and reached more people, the name changed from St. Mark's to Ardwick Association Football Club in 1887. And then finally, in 1894, the club officially became Manchester City Football Club. Now maybe that name change brought them some luck, because only a few years later, they won their first ever trophy, the second division title. That earned them promotion to the first division, which at the time was the highest level of English football. So by the start of the 20th century, Manchester City were already competing with the biggest clubs in England. Then, in 1904, City won their first major trophy after beating Bolton Wanderers in the FA Cup final. And here's the funny part. That made Manchester City the first club from Manchester to ever win a major trophy. Yes, they won silverware before Manchester United. And honestly, City fans will probably remind United fans about that until the end of time. That same season, City nearly completed the league and cup double too, but narrowly missed out on the league title after finishing second. But only a couple years later, complete chaos arrived. 17 Manchester City players were suspended because of financial irregularities. Their captain, Billy Meredith, was accused of bribing an Aston Villa player to lose a match. And after getting suspended by City, Meredith joined Manchester United, which honestly feels like one of the earliest examples of football betrayal. Back then, Manchester City played at a stadium called Hyde Road. At least, until disaster struck. In 1920, a fire completely destroyed the main stand, forcing the club to move stadiums. So in 1923, Manchester City moved into Main Road, and that stadium became their home for the next 80 years. 80 years. Which honestly feels crazy in modern football, where clubs redesign stadiums every 5 business days. Main Road remained City's home until 2003, when they eventually moved into the City of Manchester Stadium, now known as the Etihad. But before we get to the modern era, there's still a lot of madness left in City's early history. Because during the 1930s, Manchester City started becoming genuinely successful. They reached back-to-back FA Cup finals, losing to Everton in 1933 before beating Portsmouth in 1934. And during that 1934 season, Manchester City actually broke one of the most ridiculous records in English football history. In an FA Cup match against Stoke City, over 84,000 fans packed into Main Road. 84,000. That became the highest home attendance ever recorded by an English football club. And technically, you could argue City still hold that record because the only higher attendance happened decades later at Wembley Stadium. So yeah, that whole "City have no fans" joke kind of falls apart when you realize they've been filling stadiums since black and white television existed. Then things got even crazier. In 1937, Manchester City won their first ever league title. But what happened the very next season honestly sounds fake. City got relegated immediately, a season after winning the league. And somehow, despite getting relegated, they still scored more goals than every other club in the division, which genuinely makes zero sense. Then came the 1950s, which produced one of the most influential tactical ideas in football history. Manchester City developed something called the Revie Plan, named after their player, Don Revie. Now Revie was technically a striker, but instead of staying high up the pitch, he constantly dropped deep into midfield and dragged defenders out of position. Basically, he was playing as a false nine decades before modern football made it trendy. So congratulations. Pep Guardiola wasn't the first football hipster after all. The Revie Plan helped Manchester City reach back-to-back FA Cup finals again. They lost to Newcastle in 1955, but beat Birmingham City in 1956. But once again, Manchester City's highs were quickly followed by huge lows. By the 1960s, the club was struggling badly. They got relegated in 1963, and attendances collapsed dramatically. At one point, just over 8,000 fans showed up for a home game, which looked especially crazy compared to the record-breaking crowds from 30 years earlier. Still, City eventually bounced back again. They won the FA Cup in 1969, and then lifted their first European trophy, the European Cup Winners' Cup, in 1970. That same season, they also won the League Cup, becoming only the second English club ever to win both a domestic cup and a European trophy in the same season. And obviously, we can't talk about Manchester City's history without mentioning Manchester United, because whether City fans admit it or not, a huge part of their identity has always been connected to competing with their neighbors, which is why one of the sweetest moments in City history happened in 1974. Manchester United needed a win to avoid relegation. Instead, Manchester City beat them 1-0 and sent United down to the second division. And the funniest part? The winning goal was scored by Dennis Law, a former Manchester United player. That is genuinely football terrorism. The 1970s overall were actually pretty good for City. Unfortunately, the 1980s absolutely were not. The club went through 7 different managers and won absolutely nothing. They lost the 1981 FA Cup final to Tottenham, got relegated multiple times, and spent years bouncing between divisions. Then came the Premier League era. Manchester City were one of the founding members of the Premier League in 1992, and you'd think that would have started a glorious new chapter. Instead, things somehow got worse. In 1996, City were relegated again. Then after just 2 years in the second tier, they got relegated again into the third division. Yes, Manchester City, future treble winners, once played, but in 1998, David Bernstein became chairman and started rebuilding everything properly. Better finances, better planning, better structure, and slowly, City climbed back up. By 2000, they were back in the Premier League. Although, they immediately got relegated again in 2001, because apparently City just enjoyed causing emotional damage to their fans. Then Kevin Keegan arrived, and honestly, he changed everything. Keegan brought excitement back to the club. He got them promoted in 2002 and actually kept them stable in the Premier League. City started competing properly again. And around that same time, another huge moment arrived. After 80 years at Main Road, Manchester City moved into the City of Manchester Stadium in 2003, the stadium we now know as the Etihad. Then in 2007, the club made another major change by appointing Sven-Göran Eriksson, their first ever foreign manager. Now he only lasted years, would lead them to the greatest coach in their history. But before Pep Guardiola arrived, something even bigger changed Manchester City forever: money. In 2008, the Abu Dhabi United Group completed their takeover of the club, and football genuinely changed overnight. Immediately, City started spending huge money. That same summer, they signed Robinho from Real Madrid for a British record fee, a signing that basically announced to the world that Manchester City were no longer messing around. Then came even more arrivals: Gareth Barry, Carlos Tevez, Yaya Touré, David Silva, Mario Balotelli. It genuinely felt like somebody turned financial fair play off in career mode. At first though, all that spending didn't instantly bring trophies. So City hired Roberto Mancini, and slowly, things started changing. Under Mancini, City qualified for the Champions League and finally started looking like a genuine elite club again. Then in 2011, they won the FA Cup, ending a 35-year trophy drought after beating Stoke City in the final. And honestly, from that moment onward, you could feel Manchester City becoming a football superpower. Then came the 2011-12 season, and what happened next produced one of the greatest moments in football history. City destroyed Tottenham 5-1, humiliated Manchester United 6-1 at Old Trafford, and Mario Balotelli gave us the iconic "Why always me" celebration. But nothing compared to the final day. Manchester City needed a result against QPR to win their first ever Premier League title. By stoppage time, they were losing 2-1. United fans were already celebrating. The title looked gone. Then chaos happened. Dzeko scored, and moments later, history. Then in 2016, everything changed forever. Pep Guardiola arrived, and honestly, football has never looked the same since. Under Pep, Manchester City became the first Premier League side to reach 100 points, the first English club to complete the domestic treble, and the first team to win 4 consecutive Premier League titles. Then finally, in 2023, City won the Champions League after beating Inter Milan to complete the treble. And fittingly, they beat Manchester United in the FA Cup final on the way there, because apparently, football scripts are written by City fans. But despite all the noise, the trophies kept coming. Because whether people like it or not, City didn't just spend money. They built one of the greatest footballing structures the sport has ever seen. Now though, things are beginning to change again. Pep Guardiola is leaving, and a new era is upon us. Several legendary players are moving on, and for the first time in years, Manchester City genuinely feel like they're approaching the end of an era. So what happens next? Will City continue dominating football, or will the rest of Europe finally catch up? Honestly, nobody knows. But if Manchester City's history proves anything, it's that this club always finds a way to rise again. Now, if you want to see why Enzo Maresca could become the next genius manager to lead Manchester City after Pep Guardiola, then you gotta check this video right here.